All right. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us this morning. I would like to welcome and invite you all to, look forward to this presentation by Rula Mustafa. So, Rula's presentation today is going to be holding space, building trust, cultural humility for child welfare ADR. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, if I can ask you to put them in the chat, and then at the end, when Rula is done, then we'll have an opportunity for everyone to hear those questions and for an opportunity for her to share those with us. So I am going to turn it over to Rula to present and introduce herself officially.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and for choosing to learn about culture today. I am an FGC coordinator with George Hall Center. I'm also a family mediator. I've been a mediator since 2014. I'm also a trainer with the International Conciliation and Arbitration Board. It's part of the Aga Khan Ismaili Council. So I trained and delivered mediation in Arabic and English, and trained in Syria, Canada, and the UK and United Arab Emirates. I'm very happy to be with you today. I actually want to say something that, learning about culture is a journey, and we are all learning. I've taken a course in, I think, 2000, when was it? 2017 or 18 with UBS, University of British Columbia, on intercultural studies. At that time, I was working with newcomers. I worked for 4 years to resettle refugees and support newcomers in Canada. So I noticed, the diversity of the Canadian fabric, and that, of course, posed some challenges and also opportunities to learn. So I wanted to take that course so I can learn more about the framework and, how best to improve my intercultural communication. And since then, I've become really fond of the topic, and I wanted also to share my humble knowledge with like everyone. I trained university students, workplace or employees and employers in different workplaces, and now mediators. So in any field I work, I like to actually share some of my experience about intercultural studies. So I just want to say that all of us are working, and maybe some of you even know more than me. Maybe my journey is very short, your journey could be even longer than mine. So at the end, we'll get to share our experiences, our thoughts on culture and different cultural communication. So what we will learn today, we'll start by learning on cultural patterns, how culture shape uh, communication styles, how culture actually uh, shape even some of our values and behaviors. We'll also learn how culture impacts parenting style and parenting strategies. Then I will move to talk about how also in different cultures stigma is expressed around addiction and mental health. At the end, we'll talk about, some
I got
cultural
my
myths.
AirPod in on this side, so I won't be able to hear you. You got to tap me or something.
Sorry. Oh, I think someone is unmuted, right? Okay, so we'll also dive into, developing some understanding across differences and, building some awareness to become more aware about the role of culture in um, parenting, in mediation, in different ADR practices. So to start, let me ask you, in your perception, what's culture? Anyone, you can just unmute and share.
Community where you've grown up.
Yeah, community where you have grown up. Okay. I even heard the speaker earlier saying, the kids learn what they see us doing in the home. That's exactly what's culture. Culture, it could be in the home. You have like individual cultures. You have the bigger culture in the community. So the community we grow up with teach us, many things, including the values, the beliefs. It shapes our identity, the way we communicate, the language we speak, and also many other things. Also, we share probably certain art culture, certain art preferences. So culture is really very diverse across, even in terms of defining culture. When I was looking for a definition of culture, I saw there is 500 or more definition of culture. Catherine, if anyone is putting anything in the
In
chat,
the in the
yeah,
chat,
you
I
can.
see tradition, I see identity, language, beliefs, shared values, customs, sense of belonging.
Exactly. All of those are actually culture, or what represent culture. So the values that we grow up, we learn about, what's wrong and what's good, what's considered, shame and what's considered honorable. It's also the tradition and custom, like rituals, celebrations, family practices. It's also, how we communicate. Do we communicate directly or indirectly? It's the arts and expression that we see. It's very fascinating, if you go and, now even you don't need to go, you can watch everything on YouTube and see how cultural patterns exist in different countries. That also represents something that was valuable, the way they actually created their old buildings, the way probably they design buildings. Those are all like culture. And also the behavior and the social norms, especially including, parenting, um, spending time with kids, bringing kids, disciplining kids. All of those are actually culture. What I want to say here actually that culture is very fluid, especially in the last few years when internet has become accessible across the globe. People can see different cultures, can communicate with people from different countries, get to learn from each others. So culture also changing across generations. I remember, some of the beliefs that our ancestor held. My mom, what was like wrong for her is not wrong for me. And now when I actually went back to see my family in Syria, I was surprised with my nephews and nieces, the young ones, how open they have become. And during our time we weren't that actually open because we didn't have any exposure to the outside world. Now with the internet you can actually get even to learn about different concepts and different perspectives and see even different perspectives. Before, culture was really contained within like one community, so almost everyone had like similar perspectives. Now it's more, becoming more open to everyone across the globe, except I would say maybe rural areas where they don't have, the privilege we have accessing the internet, getting to learn about different cultures. Culture actually is the invisible force that shapes everything, we see. It shapes our world perceptions and decisions. Culture is actually a lens that each one of us wear. I don't see your lens, you don't see my lens. That's why sometimes, there is misunderstanding or miscommunication. But this is how we see the world through the lens that we wear. And mostly those lenses are actually inherited from our communities that we come from or from our parents and our families that was in charge of upbringing us. Culture is like the gravity, it impacts everything, but it doesn't actually, we can't see it, we can't even feel it, but we know that, it exists and it's even, impacting everything on this earth. Also, culture shapes the relationship and the interactions. People from different cultures, build relationship differently, build trust differently. Even the way they interact, how I interact with someone, how I actually build friendship, and even, I would say the relationship within the same family is also shaped by culture. And I will explain about this more later. Culture also plays a huge role in, identifying what's conflict, what's constitute a conflict for me and for someone else, and how I deal with conflict, escalated or de-escalated. It also, impact the conflict resolution, how we approach conflict resolution, who should be involved in conflict resolution, and what approach do we take. Also, the family definition is different from one culture to another. In some culture, it is, when you say family, it means the extended family. Everyone, your cousins, aunts, uncles, elders, those are family. In other culture, it could be only the nuclear family, the parents and the kids. And we'll see how that impacts actually the ADR processes. So as you see here, I wanted actually to share with you this cultural iceberg. What's observable is the behavior, the words, the acts that we see, and that's actually what we see, but we don't know that what's beneath the water is actually more than what we see. And whatever is beneath the water, like the religion, the history, the media, the family, the educational system, the economics, those are actually the drive behind the behavior. So our mind usually takes a shortcut to judge people based on what we see on the surface, and that's what's called unconscious bias. But actually, what's beneath the iceberg is more important actually for us to think about and see, and understand as well and recognize. Because what's behind the iceberg, especially for us as ADR practitioners, are more important because those are the values that are shaping the behaviors. So when we have like someone coming to us and say, for example, it's very important for me, for my child, to respect their elders. It's not just like a statement. We have to see the value behind that, why it's important for those or for this person to have his children be connected to the elders and respect the elders. It's a culture. It has like so many values. So for us as ADR practitioners, we always strive to ask about what's beneath the iceberg, beneath the water, and dig deep to understand actually the values behind it. So now what I will do, there is a framework of like different, I would maybe call them criteria on how cultures, I wouldn't say different from one culture to another. I would say, some unique criteria that define cultures. So there are three criteria. One of them is the context. How much context do you give when you are speaking, or how much context is important in the communication? The second one is, how you deal with the power in your community, and that impacts, our relationship, especially in terms of hierarchy. The third one is the dealing with uncertainty. So those are the three main criteria that I will talk about today, that, our uniqueness between different cultures. There are other criteria like, long-term or short-term orientation, also, time, how we perceive time, gender roles. But today I will focus on these three. So the first one is the context, is the culture high context culture or low context culture? So high context culture, or people who come from high context culture, they are actually very implicit and indirect in the way they speak, or when they make meaning. So I also wanted to say before this, that culture when I was saying, it impacts everything. Culture is also, how we make meaning, how we understand things. Culture also is the point of reference for us. So most of us has a point of reference that we understand things through. So this is why we want to understand the uniqueness in each culture. So people from high context culture, implicit, indirect, they rely heavily when they are speaking on feelings and the nonverbal cues. They also, in a conversation, let me tell you what's context. In a conversation, when someone is speaking, what this person is saying is not what's really important. What's important, who is this person, why they are speaking, in which context they are speaking, and also the nonverbal cues. So also when you communicate with them, when you are talking to them, it's important to observe their body language and see, what nonverbal cues they are sending to you. So in low context culture, people are usually explicit and direct. They will tell you what exactly in their mind or in their heart. They rely more on logic and clear statements. Verbal cues are important or primary in conversation. They don't rely that much on nonverbal cues. So high context people are more common in collectivism culture, which we'll also speak about later. High context mainly prevail in Africa, Middle East, Asia, South America, and low context mainly in Europe. Canada is actually mixed. The state is also mixed because it's also very diverse, but it tends to be more low context. So for high context people, actually, they see low context people as rude and cold. Low context people see high context people as intruders. I may tend you may see me like as someone who is generalizing, but this is a spectrum. Like everything that I will be talking about, the uniqueness in cultures is a spectrum. So there are people who are at the end of the spectrum who are extremely high context, other extremely low context, but there are people in between as well. So the challenge for us as mediators or ADR practitioner is that, if we are in a low context or high context, we may not understand the messages, especially for someone who is low context and not trained to understand the high context culture and how they send messages indirectly and how they actually rely more on their feelings. Also, maybe we need to be more specific, ask more questions for high context people to ensure that actually we are getting the right messages that they are sending to us. The second one is the power perception, how people see and deal with power. So if you keep a distance from people who are in power, then this is a high power distance culture. If you are okay to deal with people with power and feel like equal to them, that's low power distance culture. So in high power distance culture, when we talk about power, it could be, employee employer relationship, it could be elder youth relationship, it could be even a policeman is considered power in many high context or high power distance culture. All of those, even for us as mediators or FGC coordinators, sometimes we could be seen or perceived as, someone who has power. So in high power distance culture, the power inequality is pronounced and common, and everyone knows power. People with power can do anything they want, and you can't stop them. The community is usually very hierarchical. So if I'm talking to my boss, I have to stand up, I have to just say yes, agree on what they actually tell me. I can't say no to them. I can't challenge them. I can't come with ideas that are different from their ideas. In low power distance culture, usually, even if there is, some level of inequality, but it's less accepted, the community is less hierarchical. So, for example, a boss and their employees, they tend to be equal. Everyone sit together on the table. Everyone discuss the same problem. Employees are welcome to share perspectives, even if it's different from the employer. So mainly high power distance culture, they value tradition and collectivism. Low power distance culture, they emphasize more in individualism. Again, same countries that they are high context, they are also high power, like in like Asia, Middle East, Africa, and South America. The third one is, how do they deal with uncertainty? Are they really comfortable with ambiguity or not? So high uncertainty avoidance culture, if they really try to avoid the uncertainty, if they are scared to deal with uncertainty and they don't know how to, deal with uncertainty, then they are called high uncertainty avoidance. In that community, there is more extensive rules. How you speak, how you exhibit yourself in the community, how you dress, how you eat. Like there are a lot of extensive rules that sometimes or most of the time restrict, the individual. Disagreement is very limited, and mainly if there is disagreement, this means that it will lead to, not talking again with each other's. A relationship is completely done after disagreement. The community is more formal. There is no questioning to people in authority, especially, in like school setting or in like a family setting when there is elder and younger generations. There is a lot of high stress if the outcome is not clear. So they want to know beforehand, where they are going, what's happening, because they don't have, experience with dealing with uncertainty. They are also uncomfortable with new ideas. They prefer to stick to old ideas, like their comfort zone. The very opposite is the low uncertainty avoidance, less rules, more flexibility. Disagreement is actually valued and it's taught in school as well. There is less formality, questioning is accepted, and also less stress, and there is openness to new ideas. For me, someone who came from high uncertainty avoidance to low uncertainty avoidance, I see actually that the educational system is what mainly, drive these both. So in school, for example, in majority of the high uncertainty avoidance, you are taught to memorize and go to the exam, write down what you memorize. You can't like come up with ideas. You can't challenge your teachers. Actually, in my first year in school, in Syria, I remember one of our colleague came up with a different idea than the professor, and he said it in a very polite and nice way, but he was kicked out of school because he is not allowed to challenge a professor. So it becomes a culture, it becomes something ingrained in your brain and it triggers fears. So if you want to actually challenge or come up with ideas, or if you want to disagree, it creates really anxiety. It creates discomfort when you want to work on this. So for us as ADR, we want to work with, or we work with people from different cultures. Many of them could be coming from high uncertainty avoidance. So how do we make them, the question is, how do you make them comfortable, to come up with idea or even to feel okay to disagree? Sometimes they may agree on something that they really disagree on, but they don't have the power or the strength to tell you, that they disagree. So our role becomes even more harder, but also, it requires patience, and it requires compassionate towards people who have actually come to our country from high uncertainty avoidance culture. So as you have seen, we have talked about, I've mentioned, individualism and collectivism culture. This is another way of categorizing cultures. So most people who are, this is just a guide, and this is actually what the researchers have shown, that people who come from, again, Asia, um, Africa, Middle East, South America, they are collectivist, and people who come from mainly the West or Europe, Australia, New Zealand, they are individualistic. Not there is no actually I'm not or no one actually can say which one is right and which one is wrong. Each one has its uniqueness, and each one has something that the other can learn from. So let's talk about some of the values and the characteristics that shape each culture. So individualist culture usually emphasize on independence and self-reliance. So the person become independent after they turn 18. They can live by their own. They learn even how to be independent, make money, and choose the school that they want to choose and make their own decisions without interference or without the family guiding them on how to make the decision. Of course, the family would be there, but the youth, they can actually make their own decision by their own. Individualism also prioritize individual goals and inspiration. So it's more about what's my individual goals, what do I want to do, what's my aspiration for the future. Also, it values uniqueness and personal expression, so people can express themselves clearly. They can use the I statement. In collectivist culture, you can't say I did, or it will. If you are talking about achievements, you usually use we to refer, like the community did that, not just me myself. It focuses on personal achievements and success more than the community achievements or success. Also, individualist values promote equal privileges and individual rights, regardless of the power you hold, regardless of the age, the seniority. It tends to have like more equality in terms of the privileges and the rights. Also, the family structure often is nuclear. So when we say family, it's the nuclear family, the parents and the kids. Decision making is usually focused on the individual, and the individual themselves can make the decision without, considering probably someone outside, either, even outside them or outside their small, unique or nuclear family. In terms of child protection, there is emphasis on individual rights and also the right of the child, to have certain rights, to have certain ways of being treated and certain ways of living or standard of living. That's not the same in the collectivist culture. Mainly, I will talk, maybe it will come and I will talk why probably we don't see, there is no child protection in many of the collectivist country. There is no system for protecting children, actually. I'm not sure if I might be generalizing here, but at least I asked my friends in the Caribbean, in India, in Africa, and I know in the Middle East, we don't have like any child protection system. Emphasize independence and social harmony. That's the collectivist. For them, what's important is to stay connected to the community, to create harmony in the community. And also, the system actually is interdependent. So you continue dependent on your family, on your elders, on your brothers and sisters. Also, it prioritizes group goals and community well-being. So it's all about, it's not my goals, it's not what I want, it's what the community actually want. It's all about belonging to this community. It's all about, helping the community feels proud of me, helping the community feels, that I'm here for them. It also values group loyalty and cohesion from early age, and that's what I'll speak about, how actually the kids or the parenting goals in collectivist culture is different from individualist culture. It's all about, you have to be loyal to your uncles, aunts, and community neighbors, elders. Even if those elders actually are not related to you, you still have to care for them. So I remember when we were kids, we had like a neighbor who was old. We all took turn in taking care of her. The achievement is always about, the group, and the success is all about the group. It's not about the individual. Collectivist culture mainly like tend to have different roles for women than men. Mainly the woman will be the one who is taking care of the children, upbringing the children. If they work like short hours so they can come back and take care of the family. The family structure is often extended. So when I say family, it means like everyone, uncles and cousins. If I have in-laws, then they are also considered family, and that impacts the decision making. So usually family, extended family, also part of the decision making. The decision making is always oriented toward what the group wants. How do we satisfy the group, and how do we make the group feel proud of us? So now, as we have learned about the cultural patterns, and again, I don't want to seem like generalizing, but those patterns are, existent in so many researches. There are frameworks. I can share more materials with you if you like, but those are the patterns. But what I want you to know that cultures are also different within one country. So this is the patterns, but also the way I express my collectivism is very different even with other Syrians, how they also share, or express their collectivism. It's different from someone in Pakistan or someone who is in Africa, but the pattern could be the same, but it varies from one person to another as well. Even within, one family, when the children grow and they have their own experiences, they also express their values, beliefs, behaviors in a different way than their siblings as well. So this is something I wanted to share before we speak about the parenting goals, how they are different from individualist versus collectivist cultures. So I also asked many of my friends to get to understand more. And so in individualist context, the children are actually brought to be independent and to express themselves clearly, and they have the right to express themselves actually. The ideal children or child is the child who is confident, who is able to express themselves, who are outspoken. Um, and the parents usually ask the children for their opinions. They have a conversation with them. They give them choices to choose. In collectivist culture, mainly what the parents focus on is the respect to the family duty. So that's more important than the child itself, being independent or express themselves clearly. For them, the ideal child is the obedient child. Sometimes, and I struggled with uh, my brother, my sisters actually, when they came here. The youngest one became very expressive, and he will express his opinion and his values that he's actually picking and learning. My sister saw that as being rude, because the child has to be obedient. The child doesn't have like a say in the upbringing or in the way actually he should be brought. The children learn how to actually respect elders, respect the hierarchy in the society. They also learn about group harmony and how to maintain and always be loyal to the community and to the extended family as well. So you could see, for example, in individualist culture, you can ask their children and talk to them about their feelings. You promote their self-esteem and assertiveness. In collectivist culture or context, it's mainly about how the children are dealing with other people. Are they really being respectful? Are they following the traditions, following the values of the community? When I talk to my nephews and nieces in Syria, I try also, I myself, I could be biased in this because I really like the way children are approached here to be expressive, and how they actually, because when we were growing up, we didn't learn even how to express ourselves, and public speaking was something so fearful for all of us. So when I speak to my nephews and nieces, then my brothers and sisters, they laugh. They say they are silly children. They don't understand what you are saying. I try to reason with them. Like, for example, I learned this, also before coming here, we had actually an international organization was trying to promote the early childhood concept in Syria. I worked with them. I also learned, that the child actually can understand from early age, if you reason with them, if you show them the consequences. But many other maybe people from collectivist culture, they may not understand that. Sorry, because they are not used to, and also because the educational system doesn't promote the reasoning and the natural explaining the natural consequences to the child. The concept, for example, of time out, I only, when I came here, I learned that, you can give a child a time out. This is how, not how we were actually disciplined, because I worked with newcomers who came from refugee countries, from Africa, from Afghanistan, the Middle East. When they arrived here, knowing, the discipline system that we have, I actually explained, first thing I did, I explained to them, what's actually legal in terms of how to deal with your child here. Physical discipline is very normal in most of the collectivist countries. It's more shown as actually love and care to the child. If you don't actually be strict and if you don't discipline them, then they won't be like good people when they grow up. So in the collectivist approach, the behavior is mainly linked to family reputation. If you do this, you'll embarrass me in the family. That's what you hear mom and dad saying. If you do this, your aunt and uncle will be upset with you. And sometimes they will use God as well. If you do this, God will be upset with you. And it's always about showing that, I'm disappointed with you. This is shameful. This is not good. The community would say this. The family would say this. This is more emphasis, this is what a collectivist approach emphasizes on when they are, disciplining children. Also, I want to again say that it's related to the educational system, because in many of the collectivist culture, the educational system use the same way of discipline. Many of them even use, physical discipline. Still, when we were growing up, our teacher used to come to the class always with a stick to scare us so we can sit and, even not to breathe. I know when they prevented it in Syria, maybe 10 years ago, teachers were so upset and they were saying, how do we now control the children if we don't slap them or use the stick or whatever physical discipline they wanted to use. Again, with the, uh, collectivist and individualist culture, we see that the way they look at the conflict is different. So in the individualist culture, there is more, acceptance to the conflict, that conflict happens. This is part of life. And we have to find a way actually to talk about it. We have to solve it. In mediation or any other ADR practices, they prefer more practical processes. They prefer formal ways of resolving the conflict. They are comfortable with structured process and they know, now we are in this, we will do this, next time we'll do this. So they are comfortable with structured process. Collectivist culture, usually for them, conflict is a loss of face or it's a shameful thing. They usually prefer, someone from the community to interfere and resolve the conflict rather than coming to mediation or to ADR, because it seems that someone from out of the group is trying to, get into a conflict that would be seen mainly like a family conflict or this is a community conflict. Using mediation or any formal ADR sometimes is cause them anxiety and they might be confused. Again, in Canada, to add another layer to the actually confusion or anxiety is the language difficulty, or also the difference, in the way probably difference in cultures as well. again, if there is a conflict, they prefer someone from their group to resolve the conflict, because what they are used to, if there is a conflict, there an elder in the family will resolve it, or an elder in the community will resolve it. But again, I see with the new generation in so many different collectivist culture, they are tending to be more, structured. They are accepting, different formal ADR processes. But this doesn't mean, that sometimes they don't like prefer or prioritize, informal mediation or informal processes. For them, anything that is related to conflict resolution is related to, restoring the relationship, repairing the relationship, restoring harmony in the family or in the community. Also, in terms of their preference to the professionals who work with them, it also varies. So for individualists, they prefer someone who has accreditation, someone who is professional, trained, impartial. They usually, will ask about the formal training. They will ask about the certificates. In the collectivist culture, it's not that important. What's important that it's like someone from inside. They prefer like evaluative mediation, if we are talking about mediation where the mediator can, guide them, tell them what to do. And they will always actually ask. When we train Syrians on the, formal mediation processes, the struggle was that, they always say, we are mediator, we have to tell people what to do, because that's like the formal or the informal mediation we used to have in the community. But then mediators don't give like opinion or don't give guidance, so it was struggle even for the mediators to adapt to a new form of mediation. But we can expect people from collectivist culture in ADR processes to come to ask us for guidance and ask us, for opinions, because that's in their perception when they come to you. That's why, when we start mediation or we start ADR processes, it's very important for us, to explain to them and have them also, explain to us if they understood us correctly, because what's in their mind, the lens that they are wearing is different from our lens, and probably, they are perceiving the messages in a different way than us. Also, who could be party or involved in the dispute, whether like in the dispute resolution, I meant, usually in individualist culture, only the concerned parties, the direct parties are involved. In actually in collectivist culture, elders, community members could be part of the conflict resolution as well. They feel this is, related to the community, and they want to restore harmony in the community. They want to restore harmony in the family. So they prefer actually to be part of it, to give some input to help in resolving the conflict. There is also differences in the way negotiation patterns happen. For the individualists, usually they are very direct. They will say clearly what they want. If there is disagreement, they will talk about it openly. It's linear, task focused. They know there is a problem, analysis, and then solution. They also help the mediator or the ADR professional in some of the tasks, and they are open to taking notes and taking, and performing some tasks as well. Mainly in the collectivist culture, the communication is indirect and very contextual, as we spoke about high context culture. Remember, nonverbal cues, the context is very important. Sometimes they may actually hint rather than disagree. For them, resolving the conflict, as I said, is very much related to saving face. And, the outcome that they are looking for is to restore the harmony and the relationship. So they want the whole process to be oriented toward restoring the harmony and the relationship. So I think I finished with, how conflict is seen, or first, what culture is, how cultural uniqueness are expressed across different countries, we talk about, parenting goals, and then how also individualist and collectivist are, or they see conflict differently and exhibit some different types of negotiation patterns and ways of resolving the conflict. So now what I will talk about is the cultural dynamic in addiction. I know the topic today is addiction and child protection. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not an expert even in addiction and mental health. I have a sister who actually works in France as a psychiatrist. So she gave me a lot of information. I did a lot of research. I asked my friend from the Caribbean, African, how they see or what is the cultural dynamic in addiction across different countries. So what we see, the main things that we see as, dynamics in or cultural dynamics in addiction and child protection is the stigma and shame, the extended family and community involvement, and also, some cultural expectations from probably either the people who are involved directly and those who are actually struggling with mental health and struggling with addiction. So I will actually dive deeper into this in the next slides. So the first slide is talking about cultural variation in stigma around addiction. Again, if you want to make comparison between how individualistic culture and collectivist cultures deal with addiction. So mainly, I would also say in the individualistic culture, because there is actually laws that organize whether like the addiction or regulation that actually work around this. There are people who are actually employed to deal with and treatment regarding addiction. I see people who are working in the field, they speak differently. Their cultural variation is different from maybe the public who maybe did not have contact, or they just see, people who are struggling with addiction from far. In individualistic culture, there is emphasis on personal responsibility. So it's the person choice, the person responsibility is not, a failure for the whole community or for the whole family. Addiction is, again, a choice. If there is a blame, we see sometimes blame, sorry, especially from the public. It's mainly blame to the person themselves. But the people who are actually probably getting treated or struggling themselves or their families, sometimes they are encouraged to, talk about it, have conversation with experts, or even have a conversation with the person who is struggling themselves. Also, my sister told me, for example, most of the patients she deal with are refugees from Africa or Central Asia or the Middle East. They hide it. They don't want to talk about it to their families. It's very stigmatized. It's like they don't feel comfortable even, talking about it. If you say people who are actually from France or other European countries, they talk about it openly. Sometimes family members even come with the person who is struggling to the hospital or to the centers to get treated. You don't see this in collectivist culture, mainly. I will talk about, the legal framework that actually emphasize the stigma in the community, that in collectivist culture, usually it's a family honor because it's considered sinful in a religious term in most of the collectivist culture, or, it's considered shameful to the community. The blame is mainly on the family. The family was not able to upbring their children correctly. They didn't teach them, values, or they didn't told them, how to use religion or spirituality to minimize, any addiction or whatever. The family usually in my country, I know that not only people who are struggling with addiction, even people who are struggling with mental health, unfortunately, they hide them from other people because it's a family honor. There is a huge stigma sometimes. If you want to get married, or if you have a brother or a sister who is addicted, no one will actually accept, marrying the family only because someone is struggling with addiction. So it's considered a shame to the entire family, not just to one person. The legal framework, unfortunately, in most of the collectivist country, emphasize the stigma because it's criminalized. So it's taboo. First, you can't speak about it. If you are hiding someone who is, having addiction struggle, then you also get criminalized as well. It becomes such a public scandal, and in the whole community. Most of the the policies are punitive, so they deepen even the whole idea about stigma. And also, most of the people who need help, they don't go to get help because they are afraid of the legal consequences. Unfortunately, last week, a lawyer in Jordan, a young professional, was killed by her brother who is struggling with addiction. Um, no one in the family, asked for help before. He was trying to actually abuse his father. She tried to protect him, and then the brother killed her. But no one knew, what's going on. No one talks about it. There is no centers. There are for treatment. There is no public treatment. If someone is caught, with drugs, then they become a criminal. They go to the prison 15, 20 years. Sometimes they die inside the prisons. That's why also families usually hide their loved ones if they are actually struggling with addiction. I also try to do research to see, if there is difference in the way in the way words are used. Let's say, uh, not inclusive languages, but it's the same actually between individualist countries and collectivist countries. So uh, in India, for example, newspaper propagated stigma with dehumanizing language, linking drug users to negative qualities. They also, in New Zealand, the same. They use terms like meth head and drug addict, also, reinforcing the negative stereotype. I also asked, my friend in the Caribbean, she said, same thing, same language is being used there, very abusive language. It's sometimes considered that, this person is very bad, the family is bad, even if she told me even if they are struggling with mental health, which I will also speak about maybe in my next slide. Even if they are struggling with mental health, they are actually dehumanized. Even if it's like learning or diverse learning abilities, then they still dehumanize them because of that. And sometimes they would say, oh, the family has done something wrong, that's why the child is like this. So also stigma varies across cultures, from especially between individualist culture versus collectivist cultures. And now knowing, the patterns of, how collectivist cultures characteristic are, how do they display their values, and how, the collectivists are unique. Both of them are unique from each other. So we can probably sense how also stigma is displayed in these countries. For example, in most of the collectivist culture, supernatural causes are blamed on, addiction or mental health. And it's mainly seen as a moral failing, and they try to rely more on healing. I have a friend who actually always, her mom in Syria took her, to we call them sheikh, they pretend that they have super power, and then they heal you if you are struggling. So she always took her there. She was abused many times by them. And, when she went to Europe and she continued to struggle with mental health, it turned out that she has actually generalized anxiety disorder, and she's been on medicine since then. But unfortunately, in majority of the countries, collectivist countries, even my sister also, emphasized this to me, that they look at the the addiction or mental health as, caused by being possessed. I don't know, like, what's the word, if it's the right one, being possessed by higher power, and then you need to go to spiritual people to actually help you get out of this, like, position. Um, there is, I recently actually, so I thought that this is done because that was during my mom age, but I saw a documentary in BBC World, and they were talking about, unfortunately, they interviewed so many women in the Arab world. They have went through the same, mental health struggle, or being rebellious against their families, and their families will take them to those people, and those who are considered, very spiritual, and then they would abuse them sexually. Many of them, didn't show their identity when they were speaking. One of them even got raped by one of those men, and became pregnant later. So unfortunately, it's still prevalent. Even, we are trying to raise awareness about it, but in some communities, it's still. So that's done also now. I know I have only a few minutes left, so I'm done now with how, culture sees the stigma and the mental addiction. In the 4 minutes left, I will just try to emphasize on us, as mediators, to actually, I know mediators and ADR practitioners, I know all of us, our majority of us actually um, know how to use the judgmental approach, to actively listen, to acknowledge the cultural background, especially in the AGC process. I think we are really good at that because we have also time and we get trained on that. In mediation, we have very limited time, and then we struggle also, with timing, and especially if it's court connected cases. But we need to actually understand the background of the person who is coming to us to resolve their conflict, being very welcoming, creating a welcoming atmosphere, especially if, they are from culture where they feel the anxiety and the fear, and they feel that you are an authority figure, that you are there to decide for them, you are there, to give them decisions and whatever. Creating that first welcoming atmosphere and welcoming environment is very important. There are a few examples that I added, how we ask about cultural nuances without offending the other, because I got many questions at the beginning when I was presenting about how do I ask without offending someone. It's very important for us to acknowledge our own knowledge gap. For example, I want to make sure I understand your perspective. Can you help me? This might be outside of my experience. What should I know? This helps in building, trust, and also show humility and show that you are a learner. You are not like imposing anything on them. Also, normalize the differences. So different families do or approach this differently. Can you tell me how this is approached in your community? Also, offering choices and flexibility. This is really important. One thing that struck me at the beginning when I came to Canada, how you have actually agency to decide for yourself. In most of the collectivist countries, unfortunately, you don't have this agency. You don't have many choices, you don't have the flexibility. So if you actually give them the flexibility and the choices, they feel empowered, and they feel actually that you are genuine. It's not just words that you are using, you are really being humble, you are trying to empower them. And it shows them that you are not actually imposing a Western system on them. Also, showing appreciation and respect. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I really learned a lot from you and your family today. Last thing, I know, I said this at the beginning, I'm still learning. All of us actually will continue learning from one another. The first maybe step for learning is to recognize our unconscious bias. We all have our blind spots. If you are in ADR setting, we are helping a family or a person through ADR, and we feel that we are actually judging or, just stereotyping maybe we pause, ask questions, and then adapt our style to suit this family culture and to continue engaging in self-reflection. There is a lot for us, here. I would love also to hear from all of you, from your experiences and your thoughts on what I presented today. If you want actually researches on what I, especially on the cultural patterns, I am happy. I have so many researches that I can share with you if you want to learn more. Actually, books that you can read. I'm reading 2 books about culture in mediation now. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it met your expectation. And we are open now for any question, for sharing any perspectives.
Wow, fantastic, Rola. Thank you so much. Wow, so much to think about.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 15 minutes. If people have specific questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and feel free to ask Rola any questions that you may have. I know lots and lots of information and things going through my head.
May I ask a question, please?
Nancy,
Sure.
go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful, Rola. So the question I have, I think, has to do with collectivist perception with respect to divorce. I am working to, working to facilitate a family group conference for family from Pakistan, where the parents have separated and there is high conflict of divorce, of high conflict in this relationship between mom and dad's family, and mom's alleging that she was assaulted by both dad and his family, and they are denying it. And I am trying to get them coming together where they're not trusting one another. So curious to hear what's your sense about how the collectivist community manage divorce.
Yeah. Divorce is even more complicated than just culture when actually religion is part of it as well.
Right.
Are the family Muslim?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Oh, sorry. No,
no.
that mom's family is Muslim and dad's family is Hindu.
Okay. Because sometimes, there is certain like religious beliefs in terms of like divorce and how it's impacting the family and impacting the children. And then it becomes even, more complicated when certain parties want, to take the religion to their side. I
Yes.
know like from certain families I worked with, then they would like always, put some verses from the Quran, for example, in there and what's allowed and what's not allowed and how the divorce happened. I know, in how long have they been here? Do you know?
They have been here for 3 years.
3 years. I would say pretty new, especially for adults, so it's still a lot of like cultural background.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, except like what I would tell you is to actually meet with each one of them individually.
Yeah.
Then that's what we do in FGC, right? And then
Yes.
try to understand their concepts and what's complicating things. I know, unfortunately, in certain, even like I wouldn't say in certain countries. I first thought, certain countries have more like tendency to assault women, but I think more researchers are showing everywhere. Like no one country probably is better than the other in terms of assaulting women. So I would say also listen, see who is involved, who is the party are missing from the table. Is there anyone else, from the family who should be there? Because in this collectivist country or collectivist culture, the divorce is not just about, the husband and the wife. It's the extended family as well. And see, is anyone even from back home trying to uh, involved, whether positively or negatively. Sometimes, elders can be very wise and they can actually support the process and support the families. And then also, is someone from, an extended family need to be there? Even if they are probably in another country, do they need to speak? Do we need to hear from them? Understand the complexity and understand, what's probably not being told. Do you feel like you have been like you have gotten everything, or do you feel they are not sharing everything with you yet?
So they're still coming from each from their own perspective. Mom and her family are all saying that, yes, she was a victim of abuse. They witness it. And dad's family are all saying mom is making all of these lies. So they're towing the party line in their discussion. So how I have been so far trying to prepare them is accepting that they have a different perception about the past, how they can move forward to create safety in the future. So to allow them to save face, but I don't know if that's something that is aligning with their values. They're saying yes, but I do see as you identified that there is um, authority that's inherent in my place of privilege of being a position of authority as the mediator, even though I'm neutral, I'm still considered, I believe,
Yeah,
in their eyes, right, as an authority.
I think probably even more experienced HCC coordinators can actually step in and share if they wish as well, because I'm still new in the HCC world. But again, what you are saying is correct in terms of, hiding the abuse. I know so many families, they don't actually want to talk about family domestic violence just because, it's a shame to the family. I've seen many collectivist communities or newcomer communities here, they actually protect even the man and hide, and try to deny what happened because it's a family honor. The family,
Right.
no one in the community should know about what happened. Even actually yesterday, I was talking to someone who is also from Asia, from Southern Asia, and the husband himself did not deny that he actually cheated, but his family is denying. He said, my father-in-law is asking me, do you have a proof? I said, what more proof do you want if your son is saying that he did it?
Right.
So there is a tendency actually to protect family owner in this situation. But again, what you said is like focusing on the future. That's really important, because we can't probably do anything except providing support, referral or external support if needed for the survival. But, focus on the future and what can be done in the future now.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have a question we have a couple of comments in the chat, but I'm just going to go to the question first to give you a bit more time because we've got about 8 minutes before we have to wrap up. How do you deal with cultural conflict when you have children in the child welfare system who are westernized according to their parents? What do you say to workers to reunify that?
Okay. This is really complicated because it also involves intergenerational conflict, which we also see, so much in the newcomer communities or in the immigrant communities, actually. Parents have grown, trying to maintain their traditions and cultures. Kids have grown in the Canadian context and they have like the Canadian values and the Canadian system, especially in terms of independence and, expressing themselves. So it's really hard, not an easy one because it has like many layers in here, many layers to the conflict. So again, as we do what we do, listening to the parties, empowering them if they want to. There is one concept that as mediators, understanding that probably this is a mediator, one concept that we work on is moving parties from ethnocentrism to ethno-relativism, where they actually focus on their own culture and think it's the only right one, and the way they actually were brought or their cultural norms are the right one, and the others are the wrong. So they see the other party in the conflict is or other person who is probably not from their own culture as wrong. So if it's in mediation setting, we need to ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions to help them actually see and move towards, I am right and the other person is right too. If I acknowledge that the other person culture is right, this doesn't mean that I'm acknowledging also that my culture is not right. Just letting them see the value in the other culture too and why it's happening. When it's actually a matter of a law and legal protection, I think we don't have I always like also speak either to my community or to the immigrants I worked with, there is a reason for protecting children here. I mean, there are two, maybe here, it could be two different things, some cultural norms and, the law. And we can't actually breach the law. But what we can do is, probably helping the mother and the worker understand each other's, and also helping the worker understand that, maybe the mother or the parent were not caring for the children. They love the children, but this is the way how they were brought, probably to upbring the children. Maybe they need some empowerment, they need some awareness, some like courses to take to learn about parenting style. I'm not sure if I actually answered your question, but it's tough for us as ADR because what we can do is merely, shifting the thinking and shifting, from past to present, and also referral to resources.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the response from Matilda was yes, thank you. So let me just read. Very informative, useful skills to add to our toolbox. From Christine, thank you for a great presentation. Your discussion of culture and ADR, particularly high versus low context, communication and bias, was very relevant to child welfare practice. I appreciated how you linked cultural awareness to more meaningful engagement and better outcomes for children and families. From Jacqueline, great presentation, Rola. Have you seen any improvements at all in child welfare working with families of diverse cultural backgrounds? Do you see a need for cultural competence training to improve this?
Yeah, as I mentioned, again, I'm still new in the child protection. I'm actually hoping that I will even get more involved in the future, taking more courses, of course, and getting more training because I really loved it. I feel, in the service like sector in Canada in general. I worked with RCC also to deliver similar training to refugee sponsors and service providers, settlement agencies, and I feel it's always needed. And we also see a lot of changes in the employees. Some employees come, other go. Some have like really good experience and they have communicated with many diverse communities. Some others didn't have or haven't have that chances yet to actually communicate with more diverse communities. So I always feel, and this is one suggestion I gave to RCC, we need probably to have asynchronous maybe course or videos that new staff can take at their own time, at their own pace, and then, join a group or space where we can actually ask questions, get to share perspectives, get to learn from each other's experience. So there is always a need. That's what I feel.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Rula. That was a fantastic presentation. Hearing from you, your very personal and candid stories, it is greatly appreciated. I learned lots around, the individualist and collectivist cultures. I loved when you talked about, pause, ask, and adapt. And definitely in my toolbox will be, how do people in your community approach this issue? I love that question. Very simple, very direct, but so much information you can get from it. So I really want to say thank you again. In the chat, you will see that Linda has put where you can sign out from this and go into your original link in the morning, from the morning to go back to the Zoom room. We do have another presentation for the next half hour. But again, thank you so much, Rula, for your time and expertise in this area. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for listening all.